Good morning, everybody, and welcome to the opening ceremony of World Food Safety Day. We are really delighted to be with you this morning. This is Linda Jackson speaking from Food Focus, and it's our absolute pleasure to be assisting the Department of Health and the National Regulator for Compulsory Specifications with this opening ceremony webinar. I have three very special guests with me this morning. They're all representatives from government, and their role is to make sure that we have a framework for food safety regulation within our country. And today we're really going to be talking about the very first call to action for the World Food Safety Day celebrations, and that is the role of government in ensuring that food is safe. Today's webinar is being recorded, and we are going to put this out on social media on all channels to tell everyone in South Africa that we are celebrating World Food Safety Day for the whole of the first week of June. As you can see from the slide, the celebration is actually on the 7th of June, which is on Sunday, and this is only the second year ever that this event is being celebrated. On the 20th of December in 2018, the United Nations General Assembly adopted a resolution proclaiming a World Food Safety Day, and the 7th of June was declared the day that the whole world would use to celebrate food safety. Now, having spent most of my career in food safety, this was a very exciting time, and I'm so delighted that we can be part of these celebrations. And so to officially open the program and to tell us more about what's going to be happening, I would like to introduce Malosi Matlala, and he is from the Department of Health. Daniel is the National Codex contact point in South Africa. This is a very interesting job. I'm sure, Daniel, I'm sure you can tell us some very interesting stories. He's responsible for coordinating South Africa's participation when it comes to the Codex Alimentarius Commission. It's one of his duties as the Deputy Director, Interagency Liaison and Regulatory Nutrition, in the Directorate of Food Control at the Department of Health, and he's been in this position since 2008. Daniel spent a long time in regulatory, over 21 years, and he's held and played different roles in the coordination of research activities in the fields of biotech, agricultural research, and various responsibilities in food control and food safety. And that's also been his area of study and skills development. He has participated in many national and international committees where he's represented the government of South Africa and the African continent. And Daniel Malosi has had the very distinguished responsibility of coordinating the events for food safety, World Food Safety Day here in South Africa. And so Daniel, over to you to open the official ceremony.
Thank you, Linda. Good morning, everyone. As Linda has indicated, we are going to be celebrating the World Food Safety Day on the 7th of June. I hope you'll agree with me that everyone has a right to safe, nutritious, and sufficient food. However, it remains worrying that almost 1 in 10 people in the world still fall ill after eating contaminated food. When food is not safe, nothing works. No one can work, children cannot learn, human development comes to a standstill. Food is indispensable human need. It goes without saying that there's no food security without food safety. The two cannot be separated. There's also been recognition that food safety has become a key in complexities around current food supply, especially in the aspects of food safety incidents that have actually negative effects on public health, trade, and economy, not only in South Africa, but throughout the world. Hence, the United Nations has actually recognized that food has a fundamental role, food safety has a fundamental role to play in achieving the sustainable development goals. And it needs to strengthen the food safety system in all countries, especially developing countries. Over the years, we have seen a growing and consistent focus of food safety in Africa, including increased demand for safer food by consumers. This was as a result of many outbreaks that happened in Africa. South Africa, as part of the growing and improving participation in to tackle food safety challenges and to safeguard public health as well as global economies, we have seen the whole of Africa have had an increase in terms of capacity, the necessary capacity and capabilities that are required to provide assurance of food safety, food that is actually placed on the market. South Africa and the rest of African countries have become a force to reckon with, especially in terms of the participation in international food standard setting body called the Codex Alimentarius Commission. Codex is about safe food, good for everyone and everywhere. Codex Alimentarius Commission, as some of you may know, was established by the United Nations through the Food and Agriculture Organizations and the World Health Organization in 1963. Its role has seen an increase in membership, which is about now 188 members, which is also to develop harmonized international standards, but also to ensure that consumer health is protected and also to promote fair practices in food trade. Food safety is critical and it's an enabler in critical to promoting health, ending hunger, and hence the United Nations at its 73rd General Assembly took a decision to adopt the 7th of June to be the World Food Safety Day. This is an international day for food safety, and it's an opportunity for us to strengthen the efforts to ensure that food we eat is safe. Everyone in food chain, whether a producer, processor, seller, handler of food, has a role in keeping food safe and the responsibility to food safety. This will be the second observance of the World Food Safety Day on the 7th of June 2020. After all, it was after the inaugural day, which was actually held in June 2019. There was a realization that there is a need to increase activities around food safety, including awareness thereof, and to reach all actors in different platforms. Despite the challenges that we have or faced in the COVID-19 pandemic, this year promises to leverage on momentum that has actually created from the engagement in mitigation of this pandemic. It is desirous to collaborate with unison to focus efforts on reaching all stakeholders, those directly and indirectly involved in food, in order to raise the profile of food safety. This year's theme is food safety, everyone's business. While we had discussions at the African Union, we realized that with the current situation of the COVID-19 pandemic, we agreed that the food hygiene would be one of the topical subjects in contributing to food safety. It is everyone's duty, it is everyone's responsibility. As part of the African Union, we share the same sentiment that this year's effort needs to focus and ensure that, one, governments as part of the African Union member states continue to ensure safe food and nutritious food for all. We also urge agriculture and food producers to adopt and implement good farming practices to ensure a sufficient food supply of safe food while addressing the potential risks to ensure that food is safe. We encourage all food business operators to apply preventative controls and programs such as HACCP throughout operations to address most food safety problems. We all have a responsibility that consumers are empowered to make healthy food choices for themselves and also support sustainable food systems to the continent. Food safety is a shared responsibility, and this should be equitably shared among various stakeholders, facing an unprecedented threat from the COVID-19 pandemic. The world nearly came to a standstill. There is now a new normal. Under the lockdown, which has caused social and economic disruptions, the pandemic has caused many businesses to close, with many individuals losing income to even have access to basic human needs. We all know that access to food is a basic human right. There was a need for even under this new normal to ensure access to food. The impact has even required food industry to innovate and come up with new measures of manufacturing and production in order to ensure both food availability and food safety. The new normal calls for strengthening of hygiene and sanitation practices, as well as implementation of food safety management systems. Whereas there is no substantial evidence to date that the virus caused respiratory illness, including coronavirus, being transmitted via food or food packaging, it is critical to maintain the movement of food along the food chain, hence calling for contribution by all stakeholders. It is imperative for food industry to reinforce personal hygiene measures and to provide refresher training and food hygiene principles to eliminate or reduce the risk of food services and on food packaging material. The industry is also encouraged to make available all the necessary personal protective equipment, such as masks, gloves, and also to ensure that they are properly used. We advise and encourage food industry to introduce physical distancing, stringent hygiene measures, and sanitation measures. Lastly, promote frequent and effective hand washing and sanitation. There will be a series of events which we'll actually talk to, which has actually been organized by a number of organizations, but we'll actually provide information at a later stage. With that, I thank you. Let's enjoy the activities of celebrating Food Safety Day. Thank you.
And so it's very fitting that I'm now going to hand over to Ms. Penny Campbell. And Penny has been managing the Directorate of Food Control at the National Department of Health since 2016. She has a master's degree in public health and a certificate of legislative drafting from the University of Pretoria, so she gets to write the law as well. Penny has a BSc and a postgraduate diploma in dietetics, and so she's passionate about nutrition. She's worked at provincial and district level of government in KwaZulu-Natal. Now she's obviously at national level. She joined the Directorate of Food Control in 2006, and her roles include supporting and advising provinces and municipalities and other role players relating to information, education, and communication. Obviously, law enforcement, importation of foodstuffs, HACCP implementation, food monitoring, street vended foods, as well as, of course, drafting and the amendments as well as the regulations under the Foodstuffs Act. She was involved in the FIFA 2010 World Cup, the Chan tournament and the Africa Cup of Nations, and she's been exposed to a wide range of topics and has gained wide and diverse knowledge and experience in a number of factors, including food safety. And so, Penny, I'm going to hand over to you now because we're really interested to hear how does the government actually ensure safe food for South Africans? What is it that is done by the Department of Health to ensure that food is safe for South Africans? So over to you for your presentation, and thank you so much today for joining us.
Thank you, Linda. Good morning to you and good morning to everybody. I'm not going to waste too much time in doing a bit of the fancy things that one would normally do owing to the time shortcomings. But my mandate is just to share with you how Department of Health ensures food safety. In our area of work, we are always looking at what does the word mean, because we've got to put it into a scope or regulation, and we've always got to ensure that it's the common understanding. So food control is what the World Health Organization has put forward, and that's fairly straightforward in terms of what it's supposed to do. And in essence, it's basically about food legislation, making sure that there's a law or statute in place with some component of enforcement to ensure that consumers are protected from safe food, wholesome food, food that is fit for consumption, as well as quality and safety factors, and that the products are honestly and accurately labeled as prescribed by specific law. In terms of the food control system in South Africa, we have what many people would consider a fragmented food control system. 3 major departments that function in the food control system, not the food chain, but the food control system. And you have the 3 representative government bodies that you've seen on the welcome slide. I've still got them as the Department of Agriculture, Fisheries and Forestry, but they're now the Department of Agriculture, Land Reform and Rural Development. Then you have us as the Department of Health, and you have the Department of Trade and Industry, which NRCS deals with some of the food safety aspects, and Macy Katz will join us just now to talk more about that. At the bottom of it all, you have another instrument, the Consumer Protection Act, looking after the consumer protection. Food safety definition, as has been also put forward by the World Health Organization, which I'm sure many of you have heard about through the COVID as well, they are indicating that the definition for food safety is that it's the assurance that food will not cause harm to the consumer when it is prepared and or eaten according to its intended use. So they're actually looking at the final outcome. So what does food do to consumers when they either eat it or they prepare it? So that's why food safety sits in the domain of health, because it talks about the final outcome relating to the consumer themselves. The really fundamentally indicating the 3 major role players in ensuring safe food for all. Us as government, as you've heard for today, we are the ones that ensure it, but it ultimately is a shared responsibility amongst government, consumers and industry, and Daniel has mentioned that as well. But we get our marching orders from the World Health Organization and the Food and Agricultural Organization, where they give us leadership and international consensus on food safety issues, policy and actions. And then from a national point of view, there must be a national commitment to food safety, and that currently resides in the Department of Health, where there's a statute that has been created to ensure that food is safely delivered to all. And ultimately, the roof that keeps us safe in this house is safe and nutritious food for all, and that's been added in this World Food Safety Day in terms of ensuring that we also look and emphasize nutritious food as well. So Directorate Food Control has a statutory function to forbid the sale of foods that may cause harm to consumers, so that's food safety, to provide consumers with information to make informed and healthy choices, and that's food labeling, and you've heard Daniel is also responsible for that. To protect consumers from exploitation by false or misleading claims, and again, that's food labeling. And to regulate certain aspects of nutrition, such as negative and positive nutrients and foods for special medical purposes. And that would be what we would call regulatory nutrition. So in that summary, you can see that we are covering all the aspects that we've just mentioned: safety, labeling, as well as nutritious foods. So the implementation of the statutory legislative mandate is vested with industry, and that happens in all pieces of legislation across the globe, that the manufacturer, the importer, the exporter, and the seller must comply to the statute. So they have then the obligation to also participate in ensuring that there's safe food on the market. It's a reactive piece of legislation, meaning that there's no pre-registration of products before it's placed on the market, and that the industry must then comply with it. In terms of enforcement, The Port Health at national level is responsible for the control of imported foodstuffs, and 52 metro or district municipalities with authorized inspectors are then responsible to monitor and enforce the legislation, which covers manufacturing, sale, which would have included imported products which are placed on the market, as well as export. Abilities or the building blocks or the elements that a food control system should have. And it's after the FAL because I've added one more, which is the one to the bottom right-hand corner. But your national food control system should basically have food law and regulations, food control management, inspection services, surveillance and data management, information, education and communication, and you've heard that also been mentioned, as well as emergency response, traceability and recalls. And that's the one I've added because I find that if we don't expose that one, it might be lost in all of the other blurbs that have been put there. Next slide, please, Linda. And then how do we go about it in terms of the Department of Health's mandate around food control? We are responsible for the food control management and the food law and regulations. And we ensure that we consult and integrate and ensure that many stakeholders are also participating in that process. And we have what we call the Food Legislation Advisory Group, which consists of academics, the industry bodies, as well as regulators, as well as consumer organizations and any other community-based organizations. And this then filters into how we develop our legislation and our food control management. In terms of inspection services, I've mentioned Port Health and municipalities already. And then in terms of the food traceability and food testing and surveillance, we have the National Institute for Communicable Diseases, the NILH, the National Health Laboratory Service, as well as the National Forensic Services. Then in terms of how we are supposed to then actually develop our legislation, we have what is called the Codex Risk Analysis Framework. And you've heard all about the Codex from Daniel's introductory remarks. But this framework talks about a risk assessment, risk management, and risk communication. Next slide, please, Linda. The constituents of that risk assessment is that we need to first have a hazard identification, hazard characterization, exposure assessment, and risk characterization. Risk management then looks at the actual evaluation of the risk, looking at what options we need to put in place in terms of how we're going to manage that risk. Then we implement and we monitor and review those options. And that has an iterative process that we're constantly feeding into then hazard identification again and going through that whole cyclical process of risk assessment, risk management, and risk communication. Who's involved in this? The next slide, please, Linda. The risk assessment process is basically what we call our scientific advice, and it's embedded in ensuring that it's scientific. And in the main, the WHO and FAO joint risk assessment committees do deal with that. But in our department, we also have what we call risk evaluators who sometimes do a bit of risk assessment, but also evaluate risk assessments in terms of setting of maximum residue levels or approving veterinary drugs or stock remedies or pesticides to be placed on the market. The risk management is the Codex and the Codex and member state, and we develop guidance, policy, regulation, and control. And again, that risk communication goes through all the stakeholders and the consumers, often in regulations, guidance, information, posters, communication platforms like we have today. Next slide then, Linda. What this slide is trying to show that we need to have a farm to fork continuum. And in the traditional food safety system, it was very reactive, and that people look more at the hazards and not the risk, and that the focus is more on in-product testing as well as inspections. Whereas in the modern food safety system, and this is what our Foodstuffs Act looks at, is that we try to look at a preventative approach. We encapsulate the shared responsibility that this Food Safety World Food Safety Day has identified. We also try to address the farm to fork continuum, and as I said, it's science-based. We don't wake up one morning and decide we're going to regulate X, Y, and Z. And we establish our priorities before we actually regulate everything. Because of the developmental state that we have, we don't necessarily have all the capabilities to put in place all the regulations at any time frame, and so therefore it's prioritized. We use the structured risk analysis process of Codex, and we ensure that there's integrated food control, because as I've mentioned, FLAG tries to ensure that we integrate our system to ensure that there's partnerships, and we try to focus on the process control. So it's not in product, so it would be like a system of HACCP or something like that. So next slide then, please, Linda. So as I've mentioned, it's a food chain approach. The hazards may arise at different stages of the food supply, and that's why you have food hygiene applications that must be emphasized along that entire continuum. But we also ensure that it's a preventative risk-based approach. So we must ensure that we have good agricultural practices in place, and that's our partner department, Department of Agriculture, Department of Agriculture, Land Reform and Rural Development. Good manufacturing practice, good hygiene practice, good catering practice. We can put a whole lot of them in, but that is encapsulated in our regulations relating to food premises. And again, we've got to always ensure that as a developmental state, we're covering both the street food vendor and your ISO accredited 22,000 multinational company in our basic piece of hygiene legislation that puts in place the PRPs, and then the more HACCP, where we only list certain sectors because we rely on accreditation and auditors to actually enforce that. Then we must also ensure that there's a sound national food control and regulatory system, the risk management. It's essential so that we have standards and we can implement our risk management strategies in terms of ensuring that consumers are protected. And then the roles and responsibilities must be clearly identified, and all the actors in the food chain, from the farmer to the consumer, all have a role and responsibility for food safety. These are just a few quotes that I've put together as well. The one is what we are fundamentally talking about today, which is ensure it's safe. Government must ensure safe and nutritious food for all. And government also has the primary responsibility for identifying health risks associated with food supply, assessing the severity and probability, again risk, of harm or damage, and developing national strategies to manage those risks. And as I've mentioned, as a country, we have committed to that, and we have in place a statute to deal with that. Tom Heilandt is the current chair, or not the current chair, the secretariat head for the Codex Alimentarius Commission. And he also shared this many, many moons ago, that food safety is a shared responsibility. Governments must establish the food safety policies, the food safety regulations and standards and control systems to ensure that the national food safety goals are met. All operators in the food chain have direct responsibility for ensuring the safety of food, and consumers play a role beyond just the safe handling of food, but they must also have the options to make choices, and their concerns must be able to be elevated to us as the national regulators. And as I've mentioned, we do that through FLAG. Unfortunately, our president hasn't said this. I think he's too busy with the COVID issues, but this is a statement from former President Barack Obama. When they were looking at reform and looking towards their preventative controls in their Food Safety Modernization Act in the USA. And this is what his quote is: there are certain things only a government can do. One is ensuring that the foods we eat are safe and do not cause harm. So that I attribute to him. We can only do this as food safety being everyone's business through a collective effect. And these pieces of whys, if you look at how they've all interlinked, make us stronger. So with that, I'd like to thank you for this opportunity to share with you what we do as food control. And just at the bottom, I'd like to say a special thanks to Miss Emmy Herbst. Mareike Herbst retires at the end of this month. So she's counting down the last 31 days for June, when she will then go into retirement. Thank you very much, Linda. Thank you very much, all those out there.
Thank you, Penny. That was very interesting, and thank you so much for reminding us that this is in fact a shared responsibility, but highlighting the importance of the role that government plays. And wow, are we not going to miss Mareka? I think she's almost become part of the furniture at the Departments of Health, and it's going to definitely be, you know, a sad loss to your department, and I think to the whole country. But Mareka, we do wish you well as you enjoy the next. Your next adventure, and that's obviously not going to be within the department. I'm now going to hand over to Ms. Macy Katz, and she is the General Manager for the Division of Food and Associated Industries at the National Regulator for Compulsory Specifications. She has two hats. Because in addition to this role, she is also the Regional Manager for the Western Cape region. She has more than 20 years of working experience, 10 of which she has spent in middle and senior management. She assumes a leading role at the NRCS in South Africa when it comes to regulations for food safety. She has more than 16 years experience in food safety, food quality, food production. She's got a good handle on those trade laws when it comes to food regulations. And I think this is really critical because she has to balance the trade aspects, but not compromise the health of us as consumers within South Africa. She has a postgraduate diploma in leadership from the University of Stellenbosch. On top of her food tech degree in food technology, her BTech, and she's currently studying towards her master's in food law, which is very, very interesting. I'd love to chat to you about that through a UK-based university. Macy, thank you so much. It's the first time I've had an opportunity to chat to you, and I'm really excited to find out more about what the NRCS does with relation to food safety. So over to you. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Linda. Good morning, everybody, and good morning to the listeners. Thank you for welcoming me, and just to go straight to the presentation for today, mainly it's just to cover the government role for safe food and nutritious food, which I think part of it has already been covered by Ms. Campbell, and the National Food Control System. I will just cover in terms of where we fit in as a national regulator for compulsory specifications. The responsibility for food safety and food safety inspection programs, including the ensuring that food is safety as government department. The key important issue with regards to government's role is to ensure that there is an enabling legislation which allows the operators, and allows the processors to be able to ensure that food is safety. And also these legislations should be able to cover all foods and also all potential hazards that should be covered in the legislation or in the national legislation. Also, it is key and important to make sure that the use of international and national food standard is used by government to ensure that they provide this role for the producers, for the processors, for the manufacturers of food to ensure that food is safe. I think I cannot overemphasize this. It has been already mentioned by Mr. Malosi and Ms. Campbell that it is important that we are the members, and we are currently as a country participating in the international food safety bodies, and we are also involved in various networks where food safety is a priority or is being discussed. National collaboration and coordination and communication is a key point in the government like ours, especially where we've got a fragmented food safety system, so we call it. And also the key thing, you can have all legislation in place, but if the legislation is not enforced and there is no surveillance of such legislation, it therefore becomes important for government to make sure that they provide platforms where legislation, there is full enforcement and surveillance of legislation. Next slide, Linda. If I can move to the next slide, I think this slide has been already covered by Penny, but however, I'll just highlight where NRCS fits in the fragmentation of food legislation in South Africa, which requires which requires coordination between the government department. I think from last year, when there was a restructuring of the government's department, there was an addition of Department of Environmental, Forestry and Fisheries, where they are mainly responsible for the regulation or to regulate the fish resources and the marine aquaculture product. As NRCS, we are the entity of the DTI, where we mainly regulate the canned fish product or the processing of canned fish product, frozen products, which are fish products also, the fresh seafood products, which we have included last year the processed meat products, and also the canned meat product has been there all the time. This all involves also the import controls and certification of the fish and fishery products to the various international countries. It is important as an entity of DTI to make sure that while we take care of food safety, however, the trade is facilitated, and therefore safe food is traded across international countries. In terms of food safety responsibility, as the NRCS, definitely we apply the principle of farm to fork principle. I think Ms. Campbell has already elaborated into details in terms of this principle. However, with regards to the NRCS, we administer compulsory specifications. Compulsory specifications are regulatory or technical requirements where the specifics of the technical regulation are being articulated or clearly spelled in terms of what are the requirements should a processor meet or is required to meet, and also what are the technical requirements that should be adhered to at all times to make sure that the food is safe. This includes in terms of the fish and fishery products and processed meat, and also the canned meat products. This includes, we can go to the previous slide, Linda. This include mainly the regulation of imports products, which also includes the importation of all products and also the exportation and certification of fish and fishery products. As NRCS, we do participate into various Codex committees as part of the South African national framework with regards to the participation of the international bodies. Of course, with that participation nationally, we do have the SPS committees and the various committees like the Food Legislation Committee that Ms. Campbell has also identified or explained. We do participate in those committees, and also, of course, with regards to any national development plan where food safety is required or where food safety is a key role to be discussed. If I have to move to the food safety inspection programs, which are mainly implemented by mainly the NRCS. With regards to the factory food safety program, it is important to identify or have clear prerequisite requirements, which includes the good hygiene principle, especially during this time that the country or the whole world is involved in with regards to the pandemic of COVID-19. This prerequisite has become key, and it has become key for government to ensure that they are enforced and these requirements are implemented by the various factories, which include the factory hygiene requirements and also the processing of products and a product requirement. These are key programs that are utilized with regards to the food safety or ensuring that the food is safe. The inspection processes include or is included mainly in the primary producers. That means we will conduct inspections mainly with the primary producers at the factory level. We will also conduct market surveillance and also ensure that the consumer complaints are addressed where it's required. With regards to testing criteria for foods, we make sure that we use accredited methods by SANAS. SANAS is one of the South African National Accreditation System body, which is also under the DTI, and also also under the DTI as one of the infrastructure technical body that is reporting to the Department of Trade and Industry. Also, we ensure the analysis, of course, of water and ice testing, chemical testing in the various products that is regulated, which include also the microbiological testing as per the sampling plans. The product inspection includes the product safety evaluation and also to make sure that there is sampling schedules and sampling plans as per the Codex plans, and also ensure that the sanctioning is implemented by government where there is non-complying of products. The key principles which we implement or we make sure that we enforce as the NRCS is to make sure that all factories do have food safety management systems, e.g. HACCP, especially for fish and fishery products. Risk management, I think the Department of Health has really talked into details with regards to risk management, but it's a key principle that we make sure that it is implemented, and also risk communication while you're managing the risk, but it's important that it's clearly communicated and it's understood. And of course, the traceability of products at the moment, especially when products has to be recalled. Just to bring a summary with regards to ensuring that food is safe. The application of a farm to fork principle is the key issue. I have already spoken to this. However, the most important thing is to make sure that there is a risk-based approach principles that is implemented to ensure the effective food control system, to identify the risk and be able to implement the risk and be able to, while you conduct inspection, you have implemented a risk-based approach. Effective food inspection services is the key role that government should be able to provide. Of course, with regards to scientific and technical expertise, it's important, and NRCS do provide this at all times to make sure that guidance is provided and it's based on science. Support to the industry to effectively contribute to food safety and through the value chain. And also it's important for government to provide responsiveness to emerging food safety issues which arises at all time. Having said what I have noted, it is really important, or I cannot overemphasize that food safety is everyone's business. Really, I would like to thank you, Linda, for the opportunity for this platform to be able to share those key points with regards to the National Regulator for Compulsory Specification and ensuring that food is safe, and ensuring that we provide that platform to ensure food safety. Thank you very much.
Absolutely, thank you. Any last words from either of you ladies before I hand over to Daniel to find out what's left for the week? Penny?
Thank you very much. Linda, yes, thank you very much. I just want to take the opportunity to thank you very much for Food Focus with having planned this webinar, and also to thank the industry, the professional associations and the other industry bodies that will continue the work through the rest of the week that I'm sure you'll hear from Daniel. But last but not least, a lot has gone into the planning of this, and I know Daniel has been working tirelessly to get this going and to ensure that we communicate also with the CC Africa and the African Union discussions. So just on this platform, I'd like to extend my appreciation through to Daniel for all that he has done in terms of ensuring that this happened prior to actually the celebration on Sunday, which is the 7th. Thank you very much, Linda, and thank you to Daniel. Thank you also to Macy for actually participating in this as well, and we hope that next time the Department of Agriculture will be available to also participate. Thank you, Linda.
Thanks, Penny. Macy, anything from your side?
Firstly, Linda, I would like to thank you, and I would like to thank Food Focus for really coordinating us and be able that we can have such coordination as government's department and creating this platform for us to be able to share through this important World Food Safety Day, or to prepare through this week. Daniel, I know he's got the whole plan for the whole week, and I wish everybody well and hope that we will participate in all these different webinars that has been planned for the week, or platforms that has been planned for the week. And thank you very much, Linda.